It's a beautiful expose on like the idea of creativity. And he says, from 9 to 6, my job is to have pencil to paper as an illustrator. And 99% of the things that I create are going to go in the garbage and no one's going to see them. But I can't get to that 1% of career defining greatness if I don't go through the sludge of the 99% of it.
The hardest part about our work is finding a new client. Having a client that you've built that trust, they've already spent money, they're already using the thing that you gave them. To get them to buy something else is so much easier because the trust is there than it is to find a new client.
Sometimes it's not always about the things and the possession and where you're going, right? It's living a life that's filled with purpose and the thing that you're privileged enough to do, and having that understanding that your work matters and the stories that you're telling matter. Your ability to do that is a skill set that not very many people have. Understand that it's a joy and a privilege to be able to call this our career, and just really refocus on those sorts of things.
On this episode of the show, you're going to learn how to leverage your unique background to stand out in the video production world. We talk about why exporting every day is the key to mastering your craft. And we also talk about some smart ways to repurpose content and maximize value for your clients. All that and so much more on today's episode. What's up, friend? Hey, welcome to the Grow Your Video Business Show. I'm Ryan Corl, your host, and so excited for you to be here. If you're brand new, welcome. I've been running my own video production business for over 20 years, and you guys, a lot has changed from when I first started. But this show is really designed to help people like you. If you have a video business, if you're wanting to start a video business, the guests, the topics, the things that we talk about are all designed around the business side of running, growing, scaling a video production business. So if that's you, I'm glad that you're here. If it's not you, thank you for being here anyway. And certainly you'll get something out of this episode. In this episode, I chat with Robert Teegarden, who is the owner of Create Your Own Path Productions. And he's a guy who went from cleaning rental cars to running a successful video business. He's dropping some knowledge bombs about building client relationships, embracing your creative purpose, and finding joy in the hustle. Newsflash, before we get into this episode, if you've listened to more than one episode, you've probably heard me talk about the in-person event for filmmakers, video business owners called the Onward Summit. This event is happening in less than 1 month. So now is the time to get your ticket, to get to Detroit, to come hang out at our studio, to meet other video business owners and learn and grow and be challenged and work on your business or work above your business, which is a new term that I just learned. So come and grow with us. I've got some incredible speakers. We're gonna have some fun activities to do in the evening. It's just a great time to get away and to experience the business of what we're doing with other people that are doing it, and to ask questions that you might be afraid to ask other people in this industry. We get vulnerable and we share real stuff, all so that we can walk away feeling re-energized. So if you felt lulls in your business, if you're afraid of AI and all the things that are happening, or you're just getting going, oh my goodness, this is going to be a great event that we're putting together for you. So yes. Also, if you want more information, you can go to studiosherpas.com/onward. I shouldn't have said also, I should have said, so if you're interested, get all the information, go to studiosherpas.com/onward, and literally you gotta book your ticket, okay? Because I'm gonna stop talking about this event pretty soon, assuming that it's we're getting real close to the date. So I hope to see you here. And with that, let's jump into our epic episode today. Here we go. What's up, friends? Hey, welcome to another episode of the show. With me today is Robert Teegarden, who is the owner and operator of Create Your Own Path Productions. Robert, technology did not defeat us today. We're here. We did it, man. Super glad and excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, you got this fancy Riverside technology over here that, it's supposed to work. They tried to lure me in with all the same stuff too, and I was like, I like my simple setup. But yeah, we're here, man. I'm really happy to be here, and thank you so much for the time, and just always love talking creativity with people that have been doing it. So great to be here, man.
Love it. This morning, I just downloaded The Creative Act. You follow Rick Rubin at all?
No. Oh yeah, I was talking about this book last night actually.
Oh, you were?
So yeah, it's wild.
Just started this morning.
What's your take on it this morning?
I love it. I mean, I think I'm maybe still in the first chapter, but he said something I'm going to totally butcher it, but he said something like, when you think about creativity, think about the universe, how it's just, continues to expand. And, we've got all these different things around. And my mind was just like sort of being blown. I'm like, yeah, no, I know the universe continues to expand, but like, creativity is just like, it's unending, right? It's just kind of fascinating.
He really is, man. And we were talking about this. So I do some part-time teaching as well, and I'm teaching at UCLA last night, and we're having this entrepreneurship for the indie artist. And so we were talking around this idea of the gifts that creativity gives us and the purpose that creatives have, in our culture, which we'll talk about in a little bit later too. But what a gift this guy has been in giving us this way that his mind works. And last night the surrounding conversation was like, the guy's never written a song in his life. He doesn't even play an instrument. And he has such a wide range of people that he's been, had the privilege of giving to us, right? You talk about early Def Jam days to Johnny Cash, and it's wild to think that he has that type of range. And what an era that we're living in from a creative standpoint, that we get to kind of absorb these types of conversations from people that would have just been a mystery, 20 years ago. We would have never gotten the insight into his mind. So it's a blessing that we get to have that.
I felt like he said something like, if you've been sitting on an idea, like a creative inspiration or something like that, and you haven't acted on it, and you don't, somebody else will. Right. Not because you didn't, but it's because it's something just in the, I don't know, I don't want to sound too woo-woo, but something in the universe that needs to be done. It needs to be made. And that was a little convicting, because there have been so many things, ever since I was little, that I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to do that. And that's all it was a spark of an idea, and I didn't, follow through on the thing. Right. So I thought that was another just, I still think I'm in chapter 1, but all of these mind blowing, one sentence things where I'm just like, dang, that's deep and profound and convicting.
He's a gem, dude. And I think about that quite a bit, actually, where it's almost like we're the vessel for the idea to come out, It's weird. I think creatives occupy a very specific space in society and culture. And so I mentioned that I teach a lot of my former career, I was working in intellectual property law and doing a whole bunch of stuff in that regard. We can get into that later. But it became really obvious to me, we're not accountants, we're not doctors, we're not lawyers, we don't do dental work, those such things. That's a very specific role in society that needs to be upheld. And the way in which those job functions work, lawyers, judges, they set order and they do. Creatives have a very different role, which I think is kind of unveiling the mask of all of that kind of, Oz type of stuff, and showing people, whether that's through poetry, through photography, through prose and lyrics and music, this is what the world is. This is an alternative take of that stuff, right? So the storytelling element that we talk about, which I think at that point it's become the new authenticity word, is telling stories. I really believe in that. You can't have a lawyer tell you what's going on in the height of a civil rights crisis. That doesn't really make sense. They can tell you the letter of the law, but to give context to what that is for people is a very specific role that creatives have, right? So it's this idea sparks, someone has to carry that through. I totally get what you're saying in the woo-woo side of things too, but it's I really wholeheartedly believe in that. We have a role and a purpose, and it's to be able to kind of shed light on these things, the nuance of what life, society and culture is. And I don't think that that's a job set for just, every person to have. It's a very specific way that, you have to view those things. It's a gift, really. It's a privilege to be able to do it.
And speaking of gifts, same topic. I'm also, during my morning workouts, I'm making my way through the Jim Henson documentary. There's probably multiple
are you
ones, but,
watching that?
Yeah, it's on Disney. Dude, it's so
Yeah.
good. Oh, I just love that guy. I think.
Were you a Sesame Street kid
Oh,
too?
for sure. I mean, I watched Sesame
good.
Street when I was a teenager. I was fascinated by the creativity, and I was still working on my alphabet when I was 14. I'm just kidding.
Right.
But yeah, he's such a fascinating person. It's like when you talk about like there being a need in the world.
Yeah.
And as creatives, like, some of us see that need and then respond to that need. And it's just funny because, he would have never set out to be, he wanted to be a puppeteer to be on TV, but he never thought about doing like a kid's show. That wasn't his thing.
Dude, a lot of his other work is like pretty dark.
Yeah.
You know, like you had like a whole series of like adult stuff that he not X-rated, but like entertainment for adults that was really dark and heavy. Like I haven't ventured into that series. I think contextually with what's going on in my personal life right now, that'll bring up a lot of like really beautiful memories, and I'm kind of staying away from that side of things right now. But he's really, again, just like you said, just another gift of what a unique way of being able to kind of get into people's homes and tell stories and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I had the privilege, speaking of Sesame Street, Gordon, like the original Gordon. Yeah. I had the privilege of interviewing his daughter, Holly, for a podcast that we did a couple weeks ago. And I was like, you have no, usually I never, Ryan, I'm not like the fanboy.
Yeah, totally. But somebody like that, it's like,
oh man, I'm like, your father was just everything to me. It's so cool to see what they did. But yeah, he's great. That's so cool. That's another great recommendation because I've heard really excellent things about that show.
Yeah,
so
it's super fun. So tell me about the world of production. How did you get into running a video business?
Man, so in a very weird backdoor sort of way, I grew up in music. I was always a creative. I'm literally surrounded by that. My dad was a musician. My mom's family was very heavily into music. I'm Italian by heritage and culture. My mom's oldest brother was my godfather, and that's a very, just like the movie would suggest, it's a very heavy, prominent position to hold. But he was like Mr. Holland from Mr. Holland's Opus, and he taught music at our local middle school for 40 some odd years.
Oh my gosh, wow.
And so I said like peep, and he would show up with, trumpets and charts and all these different things. So I had just this, beautiful privilege of kind of experiencing life through the arts, music specifically. We were also a super sports family and really competitive. I played, baseball and ice hockey and snowboarded, all those sorts of things too growing up. That'll make sense in a second. And so I chased this music dragon for a long time, and it took me really far. I got to travel the world doing stuff. I moved into an undergraduate degree that was focused in music business, but I was a vocal major and an electric bass player throughout that entire thing. So traveled around the country and around the world doing those sorts of things, which is really amazing. About halfway through that educational process, I was like, I can't really make a good enough living playing death metal unless I want to be on the road 300 days a year. And so I had this kind of inkling that I needed to figure out what like some sort of a day job would be. But I knew that I wanted to be in an environment that people kind of understood what I was doing, that I still wanted to create. And I ran a number of small studios and those sorts of things. And I kind of fell into copyright law and licensing and those sorts of things because we could literally stop making music tomorrow and people would have a job for 15 years. Did that for a while, and halfway through got an MBA that's focused in music industry as well. And I just remember having this like weird thought process that if you didn't have a visual presence as a small business, like you might as well shut your doors. Like there's just, you're invisible to general public. And this is in, one of these all-nighters where we're writing papers and those sorts of things. And that just like seed is kind of planted. And long story short, I end up kind of becoming a George Costanza moment. And I went in and I was like, I can't, this is not really working for me anymore. I was really privileged to take a number of aptitude tests that kind of said everything I was doing in my day job was nothing that I should be doing in my real life. And I kind of hit the eject button and had this golden parachute. I had a 18-month-old and a 4-month-old son at home at the time, still had a mortgage, still had to make sure food was getting on the table, still had no real idea what I was going to do. But this is like at the very beginning of NISTAT posting daily vlogs. And I was like, that's fun.
Yeah.
Because even in all of my music stuff, I was the guy with the camera, and I was the one that was doing look back videos, and like Final Cut 4 melted my iBook G4 because I was trying to do all the different effects in that regard, and family video montages and those sorts of things. And my wife would just be so irritated because my cuts were just perfectly on the beat, and everything was like synced because music was my superpower, right? Yeah. So somehow I just had this thing where, I had this life in front of me that was moving around. We kind of started this e-com business, and with these two young little boys, like we were on the hustle every day. And I was like, we're going to forget all of this period of time, And so I started making movies, and I was like, I just want to have a creative void. I wasn't making music. I could definitely feel it every night. I was staying awake on like, what am I doing? Those sorts of things. So bought a Canon T6i that's sitting behind me here somewhere. And made a movie a day, and I didn't care who saw it. And it was just getting the reps in, right? And I ended up going 200 movies in 200 days, and amidst the craziness that was going on, I got first steps and all the different like incredible stuff with my boys, which is really cool. Now to look back on it, they love it. They're almost 10 and 9 at this point, and I have a lot of friends in production, and I remember just getting this random text one morning, going, hey, I found this video. And it's a video that I had posted on YouTube that I was just silent about. And my buddy goes, he's a director, has done like incredible work with every name brand that you can possibly think of. And he goes, this 15 seconds was great. And I remember being so excited that he told me that these 15 seconds were great. This is a guy that, like, literally, I told the story last night that we were taking painter's plastic and punching holes in it with fog machines and dragon light to try and make that corn, bullet scene that they had going on. And we had made PVC sliders with skateboards as kids, just kind of, he goes, yeah, 15 seconds is great. And then I had another friend that called me and he goes, hey, like the storyline here was like really interesting. Like, how did you come up with that? And it felt oddly familiar to me, like my early days of interning in record studios. And I remember having this conversation with my wife sitting on the couch, and I said, this, I feel like I have some wind in my sails where this video thing is concerned. And I think if I can really put some time into it, I know how to work this creative thing. I just need the time to be able to do it. And she's just the most supportive and awesome human that I can think of. And she's like, yeah, go for it. So I figured out a way to balance all the other things I was doing. And it was like, come on set, I need somebody to hold C-stands and set lights up. I can't pay you, but I can pay you an experience. And that story just kind of kept happening and happening and happening. That turned into, I can't pay you, but I can trade gear. I can't pay you, but I can trade for this. And I just kind of kept stumbling into this thing like an idiot and just kept showing up, and doing the work. And thankfully I had this experience in creativity before and making music where it's like, you don't have to be the best, but you definitely have to be somebody that people want to have around, know when to crack the right joke and to smile and to be affable, and then know when to work and make sure that the job gets done. Everybody in production knows it's a lot of hurry up and wait, but when it's time to hurry up, like you really got to get the job done and be somebody that's accountable and that they can really rely on. And thankfully I just kind of kept getting the phone calls, and I kept shooting and I kept editing, and I came up with this kind of concept of export every day. There's this backstory of a guy, Christoph Niemann, who's on the show in Netflix Abstract. He's the first episode. It's a beautiful expose on like the idea of creativity. And he says, from 9 to 6, my job is to have pencil to paper as an illustrator. And 99% of the things that I create are going to go in the garbage and no one's going to see them. But I can't get to that 1% of career defining greatness if I don't go through the sludge of the 99% of it. And I just it struck a chord. I was like, I got to do it every day. And so I came up with my little hashtag, if you go back far enough in my Instagram, is export every day. And it just became this thing of like, I can't get better unless I'm doing the reps on both sides, both in post and in production. And so I just found excuses to continue to shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot. And I ended up landing my first couple of retainer clients. One of them I still have to today. It's been a really, kind of career defining relationship that I've had. And just kept trudging away. And then that same ideology became, it's not just necessarily production, because eventually I figured out how to put a frame together and figured out how to put an edit together and those sorts of things. How do I attract clients? How do I kind of market myself? What's my target audience? Like, how do I niche down, those sorts of things? But it was the same mentality of like, you just got to keep getting the reps in and doing the work, So blessed to have that work ethic. A lot of it, came from family stuff and sports and those sorts of things, but just kind of had that message. I'm a firm believer that the universe will provide, and when the student's ready, the teacher will appear, sort of thing. And I'm just really grateful that I got that message, because lifelong mission statement and goal is, can I support my family through creativity and the way that I view the world? And, checkbox, yes, like the mortgage is being paid. And, here I am almost 8-9 years later, and I still can say that this is a thing that I do for a living. And it's just a joy and a privilege to be able to be that person,
That's so cool. Wow. That is amazing. What does your work look like today?
So the way that we kind of have moved and the focus we've taken is small business, video marketing and production, really focused on health and wellness and music niches. The music one is obvious, and I kind of tapped into the sports and health and wellness stuff. Spending a lot of time in sport. It's just these two areas that I know really, really well. I was joking the other day that Luke Combs, the country singer, still owes me $500 because he did a show at the Roxy Theater here in LA, and Sony never paid us. This is in like 2018.
Yeah.
And I popped on stage and just started moving around, shooting really comfortably. And people are like, wow, like, have you been doing this before? I'm like, no, this is the first time. How do you know? Well, I just, like, my life has been this, and sport and like wellness is kind of the same thing. Like, I've just been always heavily into those sorts of things. So we do a suite of services, really. And the way that we've been kind of positioning ourselves and working towards, we're always ironing out the wrinkles at this point, but it's to create two-way communication and really elevate the way that the brand value and the brand perception is, right? I think a huge cardinal sin is, like, you have these beautiful spaces that you create as a small business, and then you just don't have the communication, the outbound communication to back that up, right? It's just like a cell phone video that your, nephew in a closet did. And I think that there's, like, I don't really want to knock that. I think that there's generally a purpose for those sorts of things. But, if you have a high ticket item and you're trying to get people to understand, like, they want to experience what your business is like before they even see you most of the time. And if those visuals aren't consistent with the price point of what your offering is, then I think that there's a disconnect with the consumer, right? Yeah. And when we feel that, I think nowadays consumers have their BS detectors just like sky high, and they can understand when there's a gap in the process. So I feel like my unfair competitive advantage is, like, I can speak creative and business at the same time. Like, I spent a ton of time in the corporate structure, and I know what that looks like. Obviously, Ryan, like, a small business owner is, like, we know what it takes to kind of make those things happen as well. And so, back to this idea, like, creatives occupy a very specific space, but translating that down to ROI and making sure that it's something that can move the needle in business is important. So we do test up virtual tours, brand films about us, testimonials, those sorts of things, and just making sure that we can have this ability to communicate with the end consumer before they really even set foot in the door. So a lot of those sorts of things.
I love that. I feel like for the longest time, when we branded in 2012, we'd been doing wedding films for the previous 7-8 years, and then in 2012 we branded. We're just corporate. What did we say? Stories. Oh, stories for brands and beyond. That was our tagline. Yeah. And so we developed this package for a brand story. And it was like, hey, here's like a 1-day shoot, 2-day shoot, 3-day shoot. It was like different price points, but basically the same thing. At the end of the day, you're getting a brand video. And in today's market and internet culture, one video, paying $10 or $20 or $30,000 for one video is like, ugh. Man, you just filmed like 6 interviews and you got like all this B-roll and you made us a 4-minute video. Like, isn't there like so much else there? Right. So this idea of a suite of services, I think is something that all of us need to be considering. And I would even say, like, to keep it in line with what you're good at and what is, I don't want to say easy, but I'll say what's easy, what comes easy to you, and what also can be helpful and useful for a business is a great place to start thinking through how can this footage, how can this stuff be repurposed that a client would find valuable. I think that's a great thing that you bring up, because I don't think everybody is doing more than like, hey, this is the one thing. Like get this one thing. But then you work so hard on building this relationship with this
Right.
client to do one video and then that's it. It's so
Yeah.
hard. The hardest part about our work is finding a new client. But
yeah, tell me about it.
Having a client that already, you've built that trust, they've already spent money, they're already using the thing that you gave them, to get them to buy something else is so much easier because the trust is there than it is to find a new client.
And the way, like to that point, Ryan, the way that we've kind of been positioning these things is, you know, for the secret on the production side is exactly what you're talking about, which is like the assets that we're capturing in the 1, 2, 3 day shoot. Like we can repurpose these things for so many other types of communication, right?
Yeah.
So if we go and we do like a virtual tour, right? We're capturing a ton of beautiful B-roll anyway. And, you know, depending on the way that the client wants it to happen, you know, it's either going to be kind of that like MTV Crib style walkthrough, which everyone is fond of, or we have, you know, interviews and positioning of those sorts of things. Like we can do a variety of types of ways. We don't even have to have the owners talking. It's preferred, obviously, but we don't even have to do it. But that B-roll's there, right? And then, well, let's just sit them down and talk about why they started this business, right? Okay, well, that's a brand film. Like, let's talk about the types of offerings that they're going to be making to their consumers. Well, that's an about film. So now I filmed one thing. I'm getting 3 extracts from it. Do you have any clients that we can talk to about this about film? Like, can we get some testimonials? Great. So now I have this whole other asset of like, let's hear what other people have had to say. Don't take our word for it. Do you have any other employees that you want to talk about this? Great. Here's a get to know the team that ends up happening for that thing too. So now I'm in like 7, 8 assets, and really I'm just keep pulling these different strings to be able to provide, you know, you these types of services. And there's so much crossover that ends up happening. But I think it's hard for us to kind of position those sorts of things. It's tough because I by no means have this figured out in any way, shape, or form, but I'm always trying to work towards this thing where it's like, no, I'm the creative. Like I hit record and I do the export thing and my NLE. But at the same time, like we have to start thinking along the lines of small businesses and really owning the fact that that's what we do and that's how we make a living. Like the idea of this kind of personified creative that just kind of like show ups when they want to and they do sort of like, that's a cute idea when you're a youngster, kind of wet behind the ears, so to speak, that you can't run a career in that. Like other businesses are relying on you to do these sorts of things. So thinking through like, what would I want in these instances, right? And I remember at our mutual friend Josh, we did a mentorship project together, and another buddy of ours named Bryant gave me this like ultra hack, which is he goes, I transcribe every one of the interviews that we do. This is in the day before that was text-based editing and Premiere and DaVinci and stuff. He goes, I transcribe every interview that we do. Bryant, sorry if I'm giving away your tactic at this one, but it's made me a lot of money, so I want to give this value too. So I'll do it all, you know, just in Google or use rev.com, whatever the thing is. And then he goes, and I send it back to the client. And I highlight little instances and I go, hey, do you remember that you said this? Do you remember you said this? Do you remember you said this? With this B-roll, we can create another piece of content for you that speaks to whatever the thing is that he could find thematically throughout this stuff. And I went, wow. And so I just started doing the same thing. Ryan's typing right now. I started doing the same sort of thing. Here. You know, and it's like, how could you kind of create additional themes off of things that they already said? Now, obviously, maybe that take visually wasn't great, but we're wizards in the editing room, right? Like we can kind of chop stuff up and put it together, and we already have the B-roll. So it's just finding a way of maximizing the value for the client. And in the era of, as you said, Ryan, of, you know, paying 5 figures for one 3-minute video that most people are only going to watch 30 seconds of anyway, we got to find a way to win, you know? And can we, I hate to say it, but can we also get to a place where, you know, we've got big, beautiful cinema cameras and all the lighting and that sort of thing, but can we also get a cell phone take of it? And can we also get just the audio version of it? And these, trying to maximize the deliverables that we can get to them that are of kind of low effort on our side, but high return on their side. You know, we're huge into BTS deliverables too when we start to turn projects around. It's just these other like ancillary ways of like adding extra value to the client that they necessarily wouldn't think about, but we do. And we know how that can be repurposed, and we know how much people personify brands and want to connect with them on a human level. It's like, well, let's show them what it's about, you know? let's give them that window.
And shout out, props, Josh Emmerich for the intro.
Best.
He's
my buddy,
number
man.
one referrer of podcast guests.
And they're probably all, and not that I am, but they're probably all excellent because anyone in Josh's network is just fantastic.
Like all of them
just
are
a
excellent except for me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he's just that guy. But last year at the Onward Summit, so here's a subtle plug for our in-person event, the Onward Summit, October 6th through the 8th, 2024 at Tell Studios and the Studio Sherpas headquarters in Orion Township. Get more information at studiosherpas.com/onward. Anyway, back to our regular scheduled program. But last year I had him on the hot seat because he talked about how he does behind the scenes. And it was like you saw all these light bulbs going off, which is what happens at the Onward Summit. All these light bulbs go off because you see and hear different perspectives, how people are, doing the thing. And what I love about this behind the scenes approach is what Josh does. He hires somebody or has one of his teammates or whoever just film the team filming the thing, right? Behind the scenes. Right. And what the client ends up getting is this like very relatable. I mean, this is why we love behind the scenes, because it's like this is real, right? Everything else is staged. You got the beautiful lights, you got the beautiful sound, you got the beautiful sound bites. But as soon as you start seeing like, oh, this is what it took to make that, like, wow, this is so interesting. And wow, these people are actually, they're laughing before they hit record, and they're, kind of joking with each other, and they're human. And so to give businesses and brands an opportunity to show the world what they're actually like when they're not in front of the camera, that is such a gift for, in marketing, because it's the most real, authentic, raw, relatable thing. And if you're a business, you probably want to work with people that feel real and relatable. Right. And I was just going to say, like, we're still pushing for brands to invest the money in the lights and the sound and, all of our editing techniques and storytelling abilities, because that front facing, I think it's great. But also, hey, you just watched our brand film, you should see the making of it, because we're kind of a little bit goofy, or just get to know our true personality. And here's a glimpse at that. I just think it's genius in the fact that you could charge clients for that. And in the other amazing thing I think about behind the scenes is, like, it doesn't need to be polished. So having an intern, like, hey, here's how you carry this around. Try to not make it super shaky, try to keep the stuff in focus, but capture the action. Like that doesn't need to cost you a lot. And that's definitely something that a client, that will become very, very valuable for a client. Yeah.
I think that you remember the days when photographers were freaking out about Instagram and like, well, I'm supposed to post this photo for free. Yeah. The luxury that the internet has given us, that kind of, on one sense, is the bane of our existence, which is like the quality of content. That barrier of entry has gone down significantly. Yeah. The intern holding the camera, or the BTS person holding the camera, like that's the perfect place for them to be, because the expectation now is that can fly, right? And it works. And I think that, you touched on something that we've been experiencing for the last like 20 years or so. Remember Tom's shoes? Just like alpargatas sort of things. And the big thing with Tom's is like, well, you buy a pair, we'll give a pair. And my wife's Argentinian. And so alpargatas are like the shoe in Argentina. And they're like, I remember we went there a couple of years ago. It's like 5 pesos. Like that's like nothing to be able to create. So I remember taking umbrage with Tom, like, dude, you should be giving an army of people shoes for the price that you're paying for them. But I missed the point at that phase of my life. And it's this humanizing the brand and the give back of what they can do that people really fell into. It wasn't like, look at my cute shoes. People were excited to brag about the fact that they got to contribute to some social good, right? Now we can talk about the true philanthropy of that in a completely different conversation, but that idea is pervasive, right? This brand 10 Trees does the same thing. When you look at the marketing of 10 Trees, you don't even see their product. It's almost weird. You can't even figure out that they're actually a clothing brand. But for every shirt that you purchase, every sock that you purchase, every beat, they plant 10 trees. And so the company and the brand has become about the give back and what they are on the human level. They just happen to sell these products in order to get that job done, right? And there's stories like this that are abound. I talk about them often. There's a beanie company that taught a village in West Africa how to knit, and the matriarch of that village is now passing on that information. They built an industry inside of this West African village of creating these things. They're pricey beanies, but like the story is phenomenal. Yeah. So on that level, to your point, like the humanization of what a brand is all about and our need as consumers to grab on to what that human element is, that's building brand, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a relational type of transaction that we're going on, not just like, I need a widget, like give me the thing and let's just go away at this point. So trying to find these elements, I think the other thing, I think the low-hanging fruit on the BTS is, what a cool moment to share with your team. Like, do you guys remember when we did this stuff, right? And then let alone that you can see the personification of them and what it's all about. We often, I talk about the start with why, right? Mm-hmm. And people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Yeah. I thought that's a real thing, right? And so I think we need to look at that internally, like what is the driver of ourselves from a creative enterprise? And why are we here? What's our purpose? Yes, to tell stories, but like at what capacity? That's a difficult thing. I'm always working and refining my version of it too, but like, what is that on the client side? And like really take the time to dig deep and go like, why are you doing this? What is it all about?
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, I feel like even in our initial discovery calls, not just trying to figure out like how much is this thing going to cost, right? Because that's what a potential client calls, and that's what they want to know is how much is this going to cost. And then for you to just figure out, okay, is this 1 day? Is it 2 days? Like how big's the crew? Like how complicated is the edit? Okay, I know it's going to be $15,000, but if you can go deeper and try to understand why they were doing this project, why now, why did they do this work at all? What would happen if they didn't do this? When you start to understand like those things, your solution becomes a lot more relevant and helpful outside of like, oh yeah, we could do this for 15,000. It's like, hey, we can do this. And we actually have a couple other thoughts on how we can really make this like powerful and connect and relatable. And, have you guys thought about this? And what about this? That's where when you start understanding why, your heart can connect to it and you can become a lot more relevant and a lot more helpful. Dude, this has been so good. I hate that we have to wind down here. But
calendars are terrible.
Yes. As you think about our audience, how do you want to leave us today?
I think we touched on a bunch of those things, Ryan, and it really, to me, like, again, I thank you for the time and the opportunity to kind of share my story and to connect with you on a much deeper level. Obviously been a fan of the pod. And when Josh mentioned it, I was like, yeah, of course. Like I listen all the time. And to me, it's just focusing in on, this wind in the sails. I talked about this idea of like those 15 seconds were great. And oftentimes I think as creatives, we kind of get really ho-hum about certain things because there's a lot of comparative stuff that's going on, and we're all guilty of feeling those feelings. I know that I do it all the time. But the reason that like idea of wind in the sails was such an empowering idea for me, and I try to look back and really feel that moment as often as possible, is that sometimes it's not always about the things and the possession and where you're going, right? It's living a life that's filled with purpose and the thing that you're privileged enough to do. And as we were kind of talking about this at the beginning, like we occupy a very specific role in society, and we have this need and ability to be able to kind of make sense of the world around us. And having that understanding that your work matters, and the stories that you're telling matter. And your ability to do that is a skill set that not very many people have. And so finding the joy inside of those things, it can be a grind, especially right now. Budgets are getting tight and the world around us has a little bit of chaos. So when the economy starts to get funky, obviously we've got a weird election looming, all these sorts of things, people get real tight with it. I get it, man. That pressure's real. And it is a thing that we definitely should, as a culture of creatives, be talking about more and more, leaning on each other for that support. But I think just really focus on like, why did we start doing this in the first place? Like, what was the thing that really got us to doing that? And just understand that it's a joy and a privilege to be able to call this our career. and just really refocus on those sorts of things, and know that every day you wake up, you got a purpose to do and a job to get done. And I'm just happy to be able to do that and share it with guys like you.
So good. Oh man. How can people follow your work, follow you online?
Yeah.
Where are you at?
I'm so Create Your Own Path's website is CYOPP.video. You can kind of see what we're doing, what we're offering there. I'm also RMT Shoots, like Bang Bang, on all socials. I'm super active on both of those things, YouTube especially too. So if you come and say hi, drop me a comment telling me that Ryan sent you. But I love building relationships with creatives. I'm fortunate to work with people across the country, and so always looking for like-minded individuals to connect with and share game about. So love it.
Dude, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, right back at you, dude. It was a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hanging out with me on this episode. I would love to hear if you had any takeaways. You can leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can shoot me an email. It's ryan@studiosherpas.com. And let me know if there's anything I could do to help you. If there's a speaker or a topic or something that you would like to hear, or somebody you would like to see, then please let me know. Don't be a stranger. I'm on the socials at Ryan Coral and also at Grow Your Video Business. And it's Coral, Koral. That's how I spell my last name. And anyway, I am here for you. I want you to grow. I want you to succeed. And that's why I do this show. I've built a lot of incredible friendships and have had some incredible conversations, and have really just grown as a person being a part of this whole thing called Studio Sherpas, which started as a side hustle years and years ago that I got to do alongside of our video production business. And what a blessing it's been that I still get to do it all these years later. So anyway, thank you. If you listen, most people don't listen this far into an episode. So if you do, thank you. Thank you specifically. Anyway, thank you for being here, and I will see you on the next episode. Onward and upward, my friends. See ya.